Welcome to 1111. I have Patrick here today. Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Tony.
So, Patrick, how did you get involved with inner work? What does it mean for you? And how did you stay committed?
I guess it was late 2019 was when I first entered this world in some way, shape, or form. I started just with a therapy one-on-one with a counselor, and then I joined a local men's group. Some people may be familiar with the Mankind Project, and so it's a group affiliated with that. And then eventually joined the mastermind group where I met you and 20 some other wonderful humans, and really in terms of what it means for me, the biggest thing is just learning how to tune into your body and analyze the patterns, right? I think so much of my life I lived in a very unconscious state, just kind of drifting along and doing my thing, and to actually take a step back and pause and look inward and, what am I doing? Why am I doing what I'm doing? And to me, that's what it really is all about. I think there's a ton of different directions we've gone with inner work, but it all comes back to just figuring out more about yourself.
hmm Yeah, it sounds like you went from therapy to the Mankind to mastermind, and then watching you grow through the mastermind, you were very curious and went into different things through those 4 years. Do you feel there's something there continuously that kept you committed? That curiosity. Does anything
Yeah,
like
it's
that
an
help?
interesting question. I think to some extent, doing the group work was very helpful for me in terms of staying committed. I think that there's probably nothing that we did that you like couldn't do on your own, like certain exercises and stuff. You can self-analyze all day on your own, but I think there's something about the group. It has like the recurring commitments and like the guys who want to show up for that really definitely helped. And honestly, like since the the mastermind is closed, I have found it trickier to stay disciplined in terms of continuing to have the outlet for digging through my emotions and figuring out what's going on. So I've had to be more mindful of like reaching out to guys like you and other guys in the mastermind to have conversations, because these deep conversations and the self reflection just doesn't necessarily happen in everyday life very easily.
Yeah, it just makes me think about how much of a practice it really is.
Mm,
Because I myself get out of tuned, and if
yeah,
we don't have that network for someone to check in on you or challenge you in some fashion,
yeah,
you know,
for
you-
sure. Yeah, the group we had in particular, I think you had a lot of guys who very much were the idea of challenging you to grow, and I think it was fun too. So the group made it easy to want to keep coming back and want to keep growing together. So definitely can't recommend enough the idea of finding a group of like minded folks to dig in together.
Mhm. And over that time, now it's been since 2019. What are one or two things that really stuck out for you that you've applied to your life that you've learned through that time?
Like the biggest thing for me probably was how to spend less time and less focus doing and more time and focus being. I think I came from kind of a high achiever, make all the accomplishments, hit the checklist, do all the things, and that's kind of how I was raised. That was my focus for so many years, was just like on to the next thing, next achievement, next accomplishment. And I found myself just chasing other people's goals too. Like none of that was stuff that I defined for myself or decided to go after. There is something placed in front of me that is a new challenge, and I'm going to go do it. And at the end of the day, after a few decades of that, it's like, did that really bring me happiness? And doing a lot of the work we did together really helped me to understand there's not pressure to achieve. And at the end of the day, it's like I don't have to do any of that. That I can choose to do that if I want to, if I want to go do the things. But instead, just noticing that I can just be still, and there's nothing wrong with not doing in the moment and just being here. I got a perfect, kind of example of that recently. So I just took a 3 week trip to Bali, and it's the longest I've ever been in terms of like taking a break from working. And I really unplugged on that trip. I did some of the trip fully solo, and a couple of those days I was just like sitting in a cafe, journaling, reading, going to yoga. I felt more at peace really than I ever had in my life. Like there's nothing I need to do, just be here. That was my job right now, was just be here and not worry about anything else.
Mhm. Sounds amazing to do that for 3 weeks.
It really was. Yeah.
You mentioned challenges, and that's kind of one of the things you are doing through this inner work journey is challenging yourself and then also supporting the people in your group as they go through challenges. Is there any challenge that stands out for you through your last 5 years that made the biggest impact?
Hmm. Something that really stands out to me as like a key pivotal moment was when we were on one of our retreat weekends, and we were doing an exercise that kind of was encouraging us to get into like a more of a primal state and really dig up some energy, right? And it's something that I was very shy about. It was kind of a stretch for me to try to like really get in this like heightened energized state and let out some primal roars and such. When I first saw it and knew we were doing that, it was intimidating, and it's certainly something I wouldn't have like done naturally on my own. But I felt the kind of the challenge from the group to dig into a new energy, and like something really shifted in me that day that was permanent. Where I kind of touched this place inside that I either was suppressed or I wasn't in tune with, and that really helped me to show up in my life back home just in a different way, and just a more confident way, a more comfortable way. That I clearly released some level of like built up tension of I guess living out of fear and such, that I was able to kind of really let go of by getting to a heightened state and letting it rip.
Yeah, you're almost bringing down like everything from years of just stuckness
Mm,
out. It felt like, right?
yeah, for sure.
I don't know if you had the same type of relationship of what that result was, and during that process of just imagining everything that didn't want to do this to anything that could be stuck to finally being released.
Right. Yeah. I think a lot of that stuckness, and that's a good word that you used. A lot of that for me, I think, comes from like other people's expectations, right? And I'm supposed to act a certain way. I should do this. I should do that. And so I think I literally physically stored a lot of that tension in my body for a lot of years. I was a very tense person. Like I used to say that I walked around with my shoulders here as opposed to here. Right? And it's just like my gut was always, had a knot in it. And I'm not saying that all disappeared in that one day, but a large degree of that tension and that weight of other people's expectations and stories for me, was able to just let go of a lot of that in one go. And that was really, really powerful for me.
Yeah, to be fully seen, in
Yeah.
essence. Any other inner work stories come to your mind that you felt you might want to share here?
Even though it's small, I think it speaks to how there was like a true shift for me, which was leading into that day. I always like slicked my hair back with hair gel, and I never once did that after that day. And there was something that like I came back from that exercise and like showered and everything, and I looked at myself in the mirror, and I was just like, I don't want to do that. It was like to put out this certain image that I felt like I was supposed to look like,
Yeah.
and I literally looked at myself in the mirror and was just like, I'm just not going to gel my hair today. And I literally haven't since. The hair itself doesn't matter, but what matters is like I had this perception of like this is how I'm supposed to look or supposed to present myself, and I just let go of that. It came home and it was just like that urge to show up in that way just didn't exist anymore.
Yeah. Is there anything that sticks out around what you've been able to learn in a group setting in the mastermind? So
Yeah.
maybe what you've learned through a group experience or just being able to hold space for people in a group?
There's a couple of aspects I think that really are powerful with the group. So one is just that support. And so to be able to be seen and be held. There was a couple times, especially very early on in the mastermind, that I shared some things that were like a huge stretch for me in terms of speaking this into existence as opposed to hiding it. To be that vulnerable, especially when I wasn't used to it. For until 2019, until I started this journey, I was very closed off. I was never vulnerable. I was never open about my emotions. And so to have experiences early on where I kind of, opened the kimono and bared my heart, and to, not be judged for it, not be attacked for it, but instead to be held and supported by the group was really, really powerful. And then I'd say like learning from the other guys. It shocked me how many times somebody would share a story that like the context of the story I couldn't necessarily relate to. Like it was a totally different life experience, but like the emotional experience was so easy to relate to.
Mhm.
And I would look at these guys who, on one hand, like I thought or felt very different from, and thought they had a very different life than me. And then when you really get into the inner stuff, it's just like, oh, that inner experience is so communal. It's so common that we're all experiencing the same emotions. We're all experiencing the same doubts and frustrations and challenges. And so it was so good for me, especially having grown up in an environment that really, I was closed off, my family was closed off. There was no emotions being expressed in my household for the most part growing up. And so to like be able to hear other people open up was such a gift for me and helped me grow, just hearing their stories and being able to relate to them. And more than anything, making that feel common, feel normal. That like here's all these guys who I admire, and they're all going here, they're all digging in, they're going deep, they're sharing their souls, they're being vulnerable, and like we're all doing it together and we're all supporting each other, and it felt great.
I liked how you described it is a connection on the emotion that you can relate to, that you kind of open up to and
Mm-hmm.
learn from their experience. The context, the person, scenarios is different from what you have, but that emotion you both shared.
Yeah.
In fact, you may not even know you had that or admitted you had that emotion sometimes until
Yeah.
you could feel it, that I felt that before too. And
Yeah.
it just opens you up to like, oh gosh, okay, this person's getting vulnerable on it now. I totally relate to this. And as they're learning through that experience, you just learn through that as well. It's so powerful.
Yeah. Because it was so rare in my life, I just so deeply appreciated like the real authenticity and the real vulnerability. And anytime someone was being real and being vulnerable, I'm sitting there, I'm starting to cry. I'm feeling it deeply. And I remember one of the other brothers in the mastermind saying, when somebody says something deep, there's like two or three guys I can look to. I know they're gonna be crying, and I'm one of them. Like every time, it just like being so starved for like real experiences, real emotion, real vulnerability for a lot of my life. Like that's just so powerful to me, to be in a group of guys where like that just keeps happening again and again. And I so appreciate it.
Hmm. And Patrick, what would you tell your younger self now that you know what you know?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is to realize that happiness comes from within. It's not out there to go be found or achieved. Like, I think accomplishments are empty. There's always going to be a next thing to chase. There's always going to be a bigger thing. There's a next threshold. There's a next thing to go do. And that's not where happiness is going to come from. Happiness is going to come from deciding within that like I'm enough. I don't need to achieve to be to be okay, to be to be me. So it really is just comes down to like, okay, let's just focus on being me. That's where we can find happiness. And then if I want to go achieve, go do the things, sure, go do that, but do that from a place where you're starting you know starting here, starting with focusing on emotions and seeking happiness within rather than externally.
Hmm. It's always beautiful to get a group that learns from each other to all come to a point where we're all enough
Mm-hmm.
and feel that. And that is powerful.
Yeah, I know it's a struggle for a lot of people, but enoughness really is a big thing for me. Be able to exhale and just say like, I'm here, and that's that's enough, right? Just existing, and as I said before, the being overdoing, right? The just there's nothing that I have to do other than be here.
That's right. Beautiful. Thanks, Patrick. This is some great insights on your journey through inner work. So I appreciate you sharing and taking the time today with
Yeah,
me.
absolutely.
Thanks,
Thanks
Patrick.
for having me.